Welcome to the Motherhood and podcast, where we talk about everything motherhood and everything else, because we're not just mothers. My name is Sophia, and I'm joined by my co-host Anna. Today we are talking about, if this isn't already the title, why the public school system is rotting your kids' brains. We will decide what to title it after this, but we're talking about homeschooling. We were both homeschooled. I'm pretty sure about that. You were homeschooled, yes. And I'm pretty sure we both plan on homeschooling our own children. So we are going to be talking about our homeschool experience, what brought us to wanting to homeschool our own children. I'm sure we'll go down rabbit holes about problems with the public school system. And then I want to get into different ways of homeschooling and how you grew up, if that's what you want to continue with, or if you want to do like the unschooling and like the what's it called, forest schooling and all the things.
Forest friends.
So yeah,
I think we actually have a local Forest and Friends group.
Oh,
I think I've heard of another mom has her kids in it. So
that's cute. So I guess I will ask you a few questions. So you grew up homeschooled. You are classically trained on the piano. I know that. So was it like a typical homeschool, like you woke up, you had your like curriculum out and you did your pages, or how did you grow up doing your homeschool?
my mom started 12 years before me. So my siblings are really spread out. There's 6 of us all together. I'm right in the middle. My brother's 12 years older than me. My youngest sister is 11 years younger. So she had been doing it for a while by the time she got to me. And out of the 6 kids, I actually ended up being the only one who was exclusively homeschooled. At some stage. For all the rest of the 5 kids, they were in a private school at some point. But I was the one who only did homeschooling. I'm not really sure why that was the case for me specifically, but I enjoyed it. I'm glad that I did. And my mom started homeschooling whenever homeschooling was not cool. And so she was kind of like pioneering that area in her local group of moms back in the 90s, I guess. Not a lot of people were homeschooling around her at that time. But as far as my experience homeschooling growing up, I would argue that without having ever been in a public school, I would argue that it was structured probably the most similar to a public school setting, quote unquote, than any of the other homeschooling methods that people do. So pretty much like your standard Abeka, Bob Jones University textbooks, and my mom would, she would pick out what she wanted to do, but it was kind of like whatever she saw everybody else doing with homeschooling, that's kind of what she used for us. Once I hit middle school grades, I actually started doing some co-ops in the area. And so, I did that for a little while. In 7th and 8th grade, I did classical conversations. I don't know if you heard of that. So that kind of like had a big upswing right at that time. So me and then my 3 younger sisters all went into classical conversations at the same time. I did Challenge A and B, which is their 7th and 8th grade. And I think my younger sisters were in there for like 6 years, like all the way through from their whole elementary years. So I did that for a couple years. Once I went into high school, I went to a really large local homeschool co-op that was once a week in our area. It's called Scholars Guild. And so I was there all 4 years of high school. And technically I did a 5th year of high school. And it was mostly because I had completed high school early. And so I would have been 16 graduating. And my mom did not feel I was comfortable enough with the world yet to go off to college by myself at that age, which is fair. Because whenever I finally went, when I would have graduated at 16, but I ended up doing like an extended year with some at a different co-op. Lots of co-ops that I did. And if you're listening to this, you're like, what's a co-op? You know, I know somebody's thinking co-op and they're thinking of like what I know in our area is kind of like the same thing as Tractor Supply. So no, I did not go to the farm store. We went to this once a week, for instance, Scholars Guild, once a week we would go, and for all the grades that they had available there was a different teacher for every subject. And almost all the teachers at that particular co-op, they had gone to school professionally and studied in that field. So like my teacher for sciences through high school, for biology and chemistry and physical science, she went to school for science education, and then her husband also was a physics teacher, and so he was my physics teacher in 12th grade. So like each of those people were educated in that particular topic, but we did it in a homeschool setting once a week versus in a public school. And so then we would go home and we would do all of the assignments that were given to us. And that, I believe that co-op was only for middle and high school. So it was more so for like students who were old enough to be able to just like hand off their work and then you go home and take care of it, you know, and the parent not really have to be super heavily involved in the day-to-day, you know, process. Yeah, so my 5th technical year of high school, I did some dual enrollment classes for college, and then ended up getting my bachelor's degree. Yeah, so if I had graduated technically on time, I would have been 16, but I went another year, graduated when I was 17, turned 18 that summer, and then went into my bachelor's degree. So I wouldn't say necessarily anything like super out of the ordinary with homeschooling. Like I said, it was kind of just whatever everybody else was most popular at the time was kind of what my mom went with. We did like some DVD math stuff. 'Cause like with the co-op, you could choose what subjects you wanted to have your child in the classes for. So I didn't have to go like, it was every Tuesday, I think. I didn't have to go to every single class at Scholars Guild at the co-op every week. I went for English, I went for sciences, they actually were able to get involved with some AP stuff, so I was able to get some, and they were accredited, so I was able to graduate with an accreditation. Whereas a lot of other homeschoolers, like my older sister, she graduated unaccredited. And so lots of different nuance there. But I was able to do like AP stuff at the school, but then I went to a different co-op for my history and for like creative writing, and then we did math at home. So it did definitely provide us like the flexibility to do what worked for us at which stages, things like that. So
yeah, growing up we did co-ops as well. It was more when we were super young. I barely remember it at all. I think we must have been like 4 or 5. And it was basically just the mothers in the group would all teach a class. And I'm sure they had like professional educators for the higher grades because we all met at like a school, and I remember there was a bunch of older kids running around. But again, I was super young, so I don't know like everything that went on. But yeah, you mentioned Bob Jones University. That's what Christian went through growing up. My husband. So he's very much, if you're a homeschooler, you can be like, oh yeah, he went through Bob Jones University. And for me, growing up, my mom kind of did like a mix of things and never really stuck to one single thing. We did some Abeka, we did some Sunlight curriculum. I feel like mostly it was Sunlight, and then once we got into high school, there's this local homeschool, it's called HEP, for anybody who's in the Houston area. Homeschooler Education Program, I think. That's what it stands for. But it's a group of homeschoolers who come and do, they offer math, science, writing, and a history course that you can take. So it's just, I think my classes I did biology, and then I did a ancient histories class. And I believe it was only like once a week, like you mentioned. So I did that when I was like 15 at the time. So that kind of gave me a little bit of an idea of like being around other students and more of like a college environment, because it was definitely taught like a lecture, and then if it was biology, you had your lab. But other than the co-op and then that, everything was at home that we did. And then of course you have like we were part of a homeschool organization for our area. So it's just a bunch of homeschoolers that get together and do like field trips. Some moms will organize a field trip, or park days, or PE days at the park. And my younger brother and sister just went to one of those. They do a end of the year school party. So they went to our local water park. So they just put on things like that. And they'll go to like theater performances and art museums. So that's basically what I did growing up. And then, but yeah, other than those three, it was my mom teaching us. Mostly my mom. My dad was like the principal, so if you're going to the principal's office. So yeah, that's how I grew up. So with growing up like that, is there anything? Well, you've chosen to homeschool Rowan. So I guess you could say like,
which
why?
sounds kind of hilarious because he's only a year old.
Right.
But
well,
I mean, I yes,
yes,
but also like homeschooling starts at any age. You can start as young as you want, because like pre-K, how early is pre-K?
Right.
I don't even honestly like to label it with like this grade versus something, because I feel like that puts it in such a like definitive box. Well, you have to do this by this point, but like kids learn in such stages, so that's its own whole conversation.
Yep. So you plan on homeschooling Rowan, and you are homeschooling Rowan. Do you know what you're gonna do, like curriculum-wise, at all? Are you going to? What do you think of the unschooling? Do you want to unschool? What are your plans?
What
It's fine.
That's a great question. I just want it to be known that I am so flippin' excited to homeschool. Like, I am so excited about it. And considering he is only one, I feel like most people probably, even if they do plan to homeschool, aren't like, doing all the research right now. But I am the, like research 3 years ahead of time kind of person. So I have thoroughly been enjoying figuring out what my path for homeschooling is. But that being said, I think that's one of the things I love about homeschooling is that if you pick a path, you don't have to stick with it because you are shaping the education to your child. You're not shaping your child to the education. And so you're figuring out how they can learn best. So I can say that I'm going to do this thing. And if I choose XYZ, that doesn't mean that I stick with XYZ. It can definitely, over time evolve based on what he needs, what future children need. But what I'm leaning toward right now is kind of a like Charlotte Mason unit studies kind of approach. So Charlotte Mason, there's tons of information out there on what Charlotte Mason homeschooling is about. But a lot of it has to do with being educated, if I could use proper words. Every time I talk about homeschooling, I start like sounding like a complete idiot. Yeah, I had to do like a simple math problem one time and could not for the life of me figure it out. And then I looked at my husband and was like, "Aren't you so excited for me to teach our kids math?" He's like, "You're fired already. Like, you don't have the job."
You're fired.
Yeah, like immediately. I think it was because I said something about like a multiplication problem, and I was like, "Oh, I haven't done long division in such a long time." I didn't even know what it was. So yeah, it was like 430 times 712, and I was like, I haven't done long division in so long. It was multiplication.
Oh my gosh. No, that's okay. I suck at math. Christian is teaching our children math, not me. I will be learning along with them.
Seriously, and I think that's like one of the biggest things is like a lot of the stuff that you learn in school, you have to relearn again. Even if your kids are in public school, when they come home and you're helping them with their homework, like 99% of parents that I know who have kids in public school or homeschool are like, okay, give me a second, let me process this to figure out what we're doing because I haven't done this in 10 years. But Charlotte Mason homeschooling has a lot to do with educating the children from literature and reading literature that is alive. And so there's a lot of reading involved in that, but I think that reading and literature is one of the biggest factors in education and raising up cultured human beings. And the unit studies portion, and I could be like totally describing these all wrong. I have not ever done these before myself, but it's kind of my aim. The unit studies is instead of like saying, okay, well, we're going to learn fractions in math, we're going to learn, we're going to talk about Egypt in history, and we're going to, in English, we're going to be talking about, American literature, and you have all these different things happening at the same time. A unit study is, okay, we are going to focus on Egypt right now. So for the language portion, we're going to talk about how early language developed and how instead of with words, there were hieroglyphs in Egypt. And we learn how symbols reflect letters and things like that. And then we learn, about Egyptian history, and we learn about Egypt in geography in context of the rest of the world and the things that are around it. And then you learn, like math in the context of Egypt. And this is how the pyramids were built. Okay, so we're going to learn some geometry. We're going to learn, about the shapes. And so, like, taking one whole section of something and then pulling every single subject out of it. Because for me, that's how I learn in context of the world. And so, like, whenever I go to mix up, a batch of dough, not only am I doing some math and I'm having to do addition and subtraction whenever I'm weighing out in grams and having to account for, my baker's percentage. So I'm doing this math portion, but also I'm having to, take into account the artistic side of things whenever I, like, there's all these different aspects of every item in life, basically. And so a unit study, makes all subjects applicable to each different unit. And I think that is really cool, especially in the way that you can apply it to any age for a child. And so if you have kids that are, 14, 9, 7, and 3, you can all be learning a unit study about Egypt, but each on their own level. And so, like, it creates this ability to, pull out what you want, what is age appropriate, and all these different subjects within one topic. So that's kind of how I aim to do it, along with kind of a Charlotte Mason influenced approach. Like saying, okay, we're going to read this book, and we're going to find inside of this book, like, where are they located? We're going to talk about this for geography. We're going to talk about what's going on in this time period in history when this book is written. We're going to talk about, like, the words. We're going to use the book itself to learn new spelling words and vocabulary, things like that. So that's kind of what I'm aiming for. What are your thoughts with Hadassah and future babies?
She's only almost 7 months now, which I just realized that this morning. I was like, what's the date today? Because she was born on the 1st, so it's like every start of the new month she turns a new month.
It's really convenient to remember the months.
So yeah, since she's born on the 1st, it just makes it very convenient. And so this morning I was like looking at what the date was, and today's the 22nd. So I was like, oh, I thought it was like the 12th or something. I didn't realize it was so late in the month. But I was like, oh, she's gonna be 7 months. And for some reason, to me, like, 6 months and 7 months is like a huge difference. I don't know, it just seems so much older. Where was I going with that? Oh, okay. So her being so young, I haven't, like, made a game plan. I've, like, seen things, heard of things, thought about things that I like and what I don't like. But I don't have a firm plan in place. I know I don't want to do, like, and I don't think this is all homeschoolers, but I think there's a good chunk of homeschoolers that are, like, very, like, strict and traditional, where they're like, you are going to sit there and you are going to read this book and you are going to, like, write this out 200 times, and you, like, they just, like, smash the book information in their children's head rather than, like everyday learning to, like, figure it out and implement it. So I know I don't want to do that. The whole unschooling, I guess, the idea of it, but at the same time,
a little bit, like, what the unschooling is.
Sure, I don't know, like, much about it. I just know it's, like,
I don't really either, and that's honestly why I'm asking, because I hear unschooling, and I see no structure is what I guess I think whenever I hear unschooling. And so, like, I don't know, like, when you're unschooling, how are you learning? What are you learning? I don't know.
From what I've gathered, it's unschooling is, and I'm sure like if this gets out to the unschooling moms, are going to be in the comments like.
I'm gonna Google it.
Okay, good idea. But what you can educate me. But what I've heard is that there's no like, if there is a sit down like learning period, it's very brief or for not long periods of time, and it's mostly like out in nature, cooking, like doing physical labor rather than book knowledge learning.
Okay, so according to Wikipedia, unschooling is an informal learning method that prioritizes learner-chosen activities as a primary means for learning. Unschoolers learn through their natural life experiences, including play, household responsibilities, personal interest, curiosity, internships and work experience, travel, books, elective classes, family mentors, social interaction. It's considered lesson and curriculum free implementation of homeschooling, and it encourages exploration of activities initiated by the children themselves, under the belief that the more personal learning is, the more meaningful, well understood, and therefore useful it is to the child.
So what happens when little Johnny doesn't want to clean his room?
Well, I'm just thinking, like, okay, Matt, I can imagine, like, a 6-year-old decides, like, all of a sudden they're fascinated with butterflies. Okay, well, we're going to learn everything about butterflies.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. But, like, if in the next, 10 years, that child does not decide to independently take an interest in other things that they practically need to use in their life, then I feel like that's not really setting them up for success very well.
Yeah.
Like, I can't imagine a child. I can't imagine anyone of any age just independently taking an interest in trigonometry. It's not gonna happen. And while I also don't think that trigonometry is really that useful in your day-to-day life, like, we do have people in the world that have careers that necessitate trigonometry. And if, that child otherwise could have, gone into that field of interest, it would have had to have been introduced to them, is I guess my point. Like,
right. Yeah. So with that knowledge, I like the idea of it, but once you really like boil it down to like, well, what is it? It kind of reminds me of like the whole, and I'm going to use this term. I know you have created an Instagram post around this term, gentle parenting. It kind of reminds me of that. In like the negative sense, like, I'm just gonna let little Johnny, like, I'm not gonna use the word no with little Johnny because little Johnny might not like the word no. So it just kind of seems like that kind of territory. To where you're gonna let your kids rule their whole life.
Passive, it's passivity, which is not gentle parenting, which is what I talk about in the post. But yeah, there's going to be some unschooling mom who's going to be like, that's not unschooling. That's not what it's about.
Yeah. So we won't be doing that, even though I think like a little bit of that is like, I think the idea of not having like a super strict like sit down curriculum is fine and good, but at the same time you do need it as well. So it's kind of like, let's not throw everything out the window and just go.
I love the idea of unit studies because, like, you don't have to have a curriculum to choose what topic you're going to do.
Right.
Like, you can go based off of the interest of the child and say, like, oh, we're really interested in what's happening, over here today. So for the next few weeks, this is what we're going to talk about, and we're going to pull all of our subjects out of that. But, like, you don't necessarily have to have a strict curriculum. But you're also not just basing it off of the whim of the child.
Yeah.
And interest may or may not be.
Right.
So.
Yes. So hopefully we haven't enraged you if you're a unschooling mother.
So what are you, like, where do you lean toward if...
Yeah, I don't know if I've, like, found a term, because I know there's, like, Montessori, unschooling,
Waldorf.
Education, Waldorf.
What is Waldorf? Okay, I just
I
see colors and silks, and
oh yeah,
I don't know what's happening there.
I think Really Very Crunchy is like a Waldorf mom. I feel like I've seen her post something about that.
Okay, I feel like we need to quit calling her Really Very Crunchy.
What's her name?
It's Emily.
Okay.
Yeah, Emily Morrow, I think.
Okay.
But yeah, I feel bad because that's how every time we talk about Audrey from A Joyful Bird,
we say A Joyful Bird.
Yeah, A Joyful Bird. We're labeling these people what their Instagram handle.
Well, I feel like that's like how people know them, so.
Yeah, that is true. Okay, Waldorf method in education utilizes a whole child approach that is responsive to a child's cognitive, emotional, spiritual, and physical well-being. It integrates the arts, service learning, imagination, and multisensory teaching methods. I feel like that seems like a really general description, because I feel like, excuse me, I do not feel, I believe that education should be all of those things inherently. You should be responsive to your child's cognitive, emotional, spiritual, and physical well-being while you are educating them. You should be integrating arts, service learning, imagination, multisensory teaching methods.
Yeah. I feel like all of these, like, new terms and new categories of teaching are coming from the typical public school, which is not individualized whatsoever. It's everybody's going to be talked to. So whether or not they're new or not, for me they're new because I'm just now hearing about them. But like Waldorf, all the categories are wanting to create like an individual whole child approach. So I feel like they like yes, it should be that, but I feel like they have to distinguish that it is that because of the public school system.
Yeah, it still creates like this system of boxes. Like you're still you're sorting things into different, ideas versus one or the other. So, which, like you said, is a very, public school system thing. You have to have this specific box, and this is what fits inside. So, and I think that's what, and I was kind of getting at that earlier, like, that's the freedom that homeschooling provides in the first place, is the ability to pull whatever works for you and do that, not just this or just that. Like, you can aspects of everything to make it work. So I don't like the idea of putting stuff into a box in the first place.
Yeah. So I feel like I've been avoiding this question. What am I gonna do? I don't know what I'm gonna do. I do like the idea of picking from everything and seeing what works. Like Anna said, because every child is different. Because she is a girl, she'll be doing a lot of like cooking with me, doing the laundry with me, sewing with me, getting out in the garden, tending to the animals. So a lot
Boys
of like real life.
too, Sophia, okay? I take my own to
Say
do
that
all.
again.
I said boys can do those things too.
No, I know that.
I'm messing with you.
I know. You can close the door, Gabrielle. I was a part of this group, and I can't remember what it's called. But it's a group for only girls, and it's like centered around like the old traditional homemaking categories. I don't remember the name. Do you
Keepers
know?
at home?
Yes, that.
I have
Yeah.
talked to one other adult in my life who knew what Keepers at Home was. Okay,
Yes.
spill it. Tell me what you know about Keepers at Home.
Oh, okay, not that much. I only did it for I think 1 or 2 years. Because I think the organizer of the group ended the group. So, but yeah, from what I remember, I think I was like 12. But from what I remember, it was like kind of like Girl Scouts. I'm doing that very loosely.
Yeah, kind
Where
of.
you kind of earn badges and like earn things based on the skill that you performed.
Girl Scouts with a trad wife agenda.
So cooking, sewing, taking care of the elderly, going to like retirement homes. I did that.
Plus the more important skills in life, like learning how to do quilling. I don't know if you learned quilling at Keepers at Home, but I definitely did.
What is that? It sounds very familiar, but
These tiny little strips of paper that are like this long, and then there's this metal tool that has a round edge, but then it has like a slit in it, and so you can slide the slit over pieces of paper, and then you twist them, and then you can like create these different like designs, and it's called quilling.
I'll have to Google it because it's like vaguely coming to mind.
Yeah, we learned so many random things
Oh yeah.
in Keepers at Home.
Yep.
Oh, here. Look, this is a peacock with pieces of paper.
Oh, okay. I don't think I ever did that.
It's art.
It's but yeah, I did that, and so even though I didn't really get into it, I don't know how long did you do it for? You can just hold up like your hands, so you don't have to talk, or you can talk.
I don't even honestly really know. I think my older sister did it for longer.
Yeah.
We joined a Keepers at Home group when I was pretty young, me and her, and then my mom ended up taking it over.
Oh.
And she did it in our house for several years. Um, and she didn't do it as much. Like there's a quote unquote curriculum, and because there's a Keepers at Home book.
Yeah.
And so, like, it has all the different skills that you're supposed to learn.
Mm-hmm.
She veered a little away from that and just kind of like did it more as kind of a home ec class, and it was once a month. But I don't know. We probably did it for like 10 years, I would say.
Yeah, I only did it for maybe 1 or 2.
The only time that we did like badges and stuff was when we were in the official group before my mom took it over.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is more like Girl Scout type thing, but with a homemaking focus. Which I think is cool though, because like a lot of girls don't get the opportunity to learn those skills, you know? And I honestly, in the last few years, I have thought about starting a Keepers at Home group. I don't know if I'm ever going to do that, but it's on my bucket list of things to do. And there is also a boys equivalent of Keeper's Home. Yeah. I don't know what the name of it is, but if you look up Keepers at Home, there's a website and it has like a tag to the other one. I don't think the organization itself is like still officially running, but you can get the books and stuff. Yeah.
Your sourdough making class would be perfect for the Keepers at Home.
It's true. I'm trying to do a sourdough class with the ladies at my church. Yeah, so we'll see if that gets up and running. We might do that for a ladies' event. Anyway.
For anybody, this is a side note, for anybody that doesn't know, Anna has, and I didn't know this until a couple weeks ago, she sent me her PDF booklet that she worked very hard on, that I was very impressed. She has a, like, beginning sourdough PDF book for free on her Instagram. So,
yes, it's the Beginner's Guide to Sourdough. It's like, it's over 30 pages, and it walks you through everything from like baker's percentage and hydration level to like frequently asked questions about sourdough, how to troubleshoot. I have some pretty common recipes in there. A couple of those need some updating. And then I have step-by-step on how to create your own, excuse me, I forget my mic is right here. How to make your own starter, and then how to bake just a traditional boule loaf. And you can do that without all of the, like if you don't have a cast iron Dutch oven, you don't need that. You don't need to have the bread basket to shape the thing. I don't think either of us use that kind of stuff. That's why Beginner's Guide to Sourdough, you just use whatever it is that you have in your house. All you need is flour and water, basically. Yeah, pictures in there. You can walk through everything step by step, and you can find that linked on my Instagram. If you go to, I think there's a couple different links on my Instagram, but if you pull up my blog website, the first thing that pops up is the Beginner Sourdough Guide. Yeah, the PDF. You can put your email in, and it'll send it to you. What was I saying? Like 40 business ventures last week?
Yes. Anyways, that was a very side note, but it's education, So yeah, I'm still in, and will be in probably until she's 1 or 2, 3, deciding what I want to do. I feel like now, like, the best thing that you can do for your young little child is read to them, because if they can read, then they can learn anything. They can read anything. So we haven't like gotten on a strict schedule of like, okay, we're going to read every night, because she's 6.5 months. But we do read to her. So I'm sure that's going to be like where we start, is reading. And then play. Play can be learning. They learn through touch, sensory, play. I mean, they're constantly learning. They're learning how to be a human right now. So don't feel like you have to like, oh my goodness. Okay. Christian, so my husband, tutors on the side. So he does like college math tutoring. He's, way smarter than I am. That's why he's teaching our children math and not me. So he hasn't tutored in a couple months, but he was tutoring this 3-year-old. Just turned 3-year-old. These parents were freaking out that their child wasn't ready to go into, pre-K at that age? And they were like, he needs to learn how to sit at a table. He needs to learn how to do his ABCs. He needs to learn. And Christian was like, he was telling me like what the parents were like expecting of this child. And I was like, that is nuts. And he was like, yeah, I was trying to convince them to not do this. And so he was like explaining to them, like, because the mom just seemed very like worried that she was a bad mom and like all these expectations on her child, and was like, oh, I need to get my 3-year-old tutoring for the ABCs 1, 2, 3 and all this stuff. So
I don't even think like at
thing.
that. I know some kids at that age can say like 1 to 5, and maybe 10, and some of their
Yeah.
ABC with a few letters mixed around. But also, how crazy! Like, first of all, to have that expectation, but secondarily, to feel like you need to outsource that to a
Right.
teacher and not
Right.
yourself as the parent.
Yep.
That's wild.
Yep. Yeah. It was like a little bit of like a broken situation where she was, I don't need to air her laundry, but there was the biological father and then there was the current father. So it was the biological father that was like pushing all this stuff, and she felt like she had to listen to all. Anyways, yeah. So my point being, I think it's just crazy the expectation that some schools, parents, authority figures have on these little children. So we will not be doing that. Yeah, I'm sure we will start. You're always learning, but I'm sure we will start like properly educating probably around 4, I guess, 4 or 5.
I think that's when like the standard pre-K starts is 4-ish.
Okay. But also like you said, like the boxes, like I don't have to mold my education that I'm choosing to give my child to the public school system, where it's like, okay, they're 3, they need to learn this, this, and this. Therefore, they need to do this. They're in 1st grade, they need to learn how to do all this. So I feel like I can, and other moms, I'm sure, can get stuck in that mindset of taking the public school system's version of everything and just transferring it to home when you don't need to do that. So, yes. I think that's what I have to say. I'm trying to think of the questions that I wrote down that I was going to ask you.
I had a question for you.
Yeah.
What is your response to the timeless question of, well, how are your kids going to be socialized if they're homeschooled?
Yeah. I would say that my homeschooled, and I think it varies on the parent, of course. Like, I think when people ask that, they're kind of like, oh, homeschoolers are awkward and like they don't know how to hold a conversation, or they're very shy, or they got like some weird nerdy things going on.
Which is so not true, first of all. Because I know a lot of homeschoolers, and I think I've met like 2 that actually fit the bill for that. Everyone else is like 10 times more social than the public schoolers that I know.
Yeah. So yeah, I would say that my child being able to have the freedom of going out with me on errands, going out with me to interact with the meat market, butcher, whatever, wherever you're going, have more access to learning how to interact with the world than the public schooler sitting at their desk, probably just like goofing off on their phones, depending on the public school. Like, I know areas are worse than others.
And then if they are goofing off, being told to be quiet, like,
yeah,
we'll talk in class,
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that would be my response. Like, and it's kind of like a no-brainer. Like, the kid sitting at a desk all day, be quiet, you need to do your work. The kid going out and learning life skills.
Yeah.
Which one's gonna be more socialized?
And also having like more time and freedom to be able to do extracurriculars and like be involved in other things. Like no one's saying that homeschoolers are not able to still, play sports with other kids their age and like still go to the playground and have meetups and play dates and like still be able to socialize with kids their age. But what you were saying, like being able to just interact day to day with the people around them, like school is the only place that I can think of that you are spending hours on end with only people of the same age group as you. Nowhere in life are we only surrounded by our peers. There's people of all age groups around us everywhere else that we go. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like it's important that our kids are able to interact with adults and interact with kids their same age and interact with kids younger than them versus like only knowing how to talk to another 13-year-old and then like be stuttering over their words whenever they're trying to address a grown-up. Like, I feel like it just gives more room for development.
Yeah. Sorry. Yes. Yes, I agree. And my brain is spacing. So you are, I guess we can talk about a little bit of the negative things that we see with the public school system. Namely, some of the things that are more like recently coming up are the transgenderism being pushed in schools, the libraries having access to pornographic books for, I don't know, what age was it? Like a first grader, they had these books in the library.
Something ridiculous.
So is there anything that you can think of that you're like, I see this going on and I am going to avoid that by homeschooling?
Is it too harsh to say everything?
No.
I mean, the reality of the situation is like, I am going to be raising my children with Christian values. End of story. And the public school education system does not align with Christian values. And so one of the ways that I can protect the innocence of my children for a healthy amount of time is to not put them in that environment in the first place. I am not saying that kids don't, get exposed to things in other areas. They certainly do. I was entirely homeschooled. Yeah. I was exposed to things, and so like, real life happens anywhere that you go. But there are a lot of things that they can be protected from for, like I said, a healthy amount of time. So it's appropriate for them to know those things and or to to be involved with or experience those things. Like you said, the gender identity crisis that is happening right now is a huge aspect of me not wanting to put my kids in public school. Outside of just being homeschooled myself and that being something I wanted to do for my own kids, there has certainly become a multitude of reasons why I don't want to on top of that. So I know there's people that hear that like, oh, well, I want to raise my kids with Christian values and so I can do that safer from home and, more effectively from home. There's people that hear that and then you give them, or they give you back this argument of like, oh, well, then you're just brainwashing your children or you're just keeping them, from being exposed to other things so that they only know what you're teaching them. Mm-hmm. And my response to that is, if you want to call that brainwashing, then any other doctrine, quote unquote, that you teach, whether that is what the government is giving teachers to teach our kids, or what I'm teaching at home, what I find is true in the Bible, either one of them is a version of brainwashing, or, like, because that is how that child is learning to experience the world around them. That is what is creating their worldview and their perspective. So one way or the other, my child is going to be receiving some sort of doctrine. And I, as the parent, get to choose what doctrine that is. And so, yes, I do find that it is safer for me to keep my child at home for a multitude of reasons. And then later on in life, it's not like I'm just going to be like, okay, well, here you go. You're leaving the nest. You just get to find out about everything all on your own. That's absolutely not it. And so we will be, properly acclimating our kids to the world, to their environment, but being able to raise them at home and just be like home focused. I think that's one of the big things is like, I absolutely abhor the idea of birthing, and raising babies to then send them off 7-8 hours out of the day, 5 days a week, and not see those children that are part of me for all that time in the day. I know for some people that works for them. For me, I absolutely hate the idea of that. I want to be with these humans that I helped create, and I want to be actively involved in shaping them for who they're going to be for the future. And so homeschooling is the best way that I see to do that. I think it's been the longest standing way across history, is families educating families. Public school is a very new thing in the history of humanity. I know for a long time we have had like higher education, but public school for just like what it takes to be a everyday good person, like that's a new thing. And I feel very capable to be able to do that for my child. And I think every parent is capable to do that for their child. I know some people will make the argument, well, you shouldn't be able to educate your own child unless you also have a higher education yourself. I disagree with that. I will take that to my grave. I've had conversations with family members who disagreed with me about that. And I stick very, very strongly to that it doesn't matter who you are, where you're at, what level of education that you have the capacity to be able to educate your own child. Because as we've already mentioned, a huge part of that is going to be relearning things over and over again, even if you already learned it before. So really, you're not that much behind the game if you don't have as much of an education and you're having to learn it for the first time. Because the person who learned it once before is going to have to relearn it again anyway. You're not really behind the game. So I know that was like 100 different ways to that wasn't even like the answer to your question, but it was plus 100 other things. So
yeah. Goodness, I'm struggling on where to take the conversation.
Also, I only have 4% left, so it's slowly going down. But just
your iPad?
Yeah.
Okay, we can go ahead.
I can switch to my phone if I need to.
Okay. I'll start ending it then. Okay, this is just like a fun fact. So, the Duggars. The Duggar family, okay? We won't go down the whole rabbit trail about them.
Who doesn't know the Duggars, okay? That's a better...
So once a year, there would be the homeschool convention, and it's held for our area up in the Woodlands. And I don't know if it was just for Texas. It must not have been just for Texas. Could have been, but I don't think so. Anyways, huge convention. All the homeschoolers come to this huge conference. And they have like the whole showroom floor filled with vendors of homeschool curriculum and Little House on the Prairie books and Lamplighter theater books. Loved those. I don't know if you read this. Love those.
I didn't know that there were books. I only ever listened
Oh,
to
yeah.
the audio.
Yeah.
It would come on the radio like on Saturday mornings.
Yes, I love those. And then Adventures in Odyssey and all the things. Anyways, so this little story is I was there with my family and the Duggars were there. And I remember seeing like their trail of children going up the escalator. And I don't know why they were there because I don't know if they live in Texas. I don't think they do.
I have no idea.
Anyway.
I actually ever watched the show. I mean, I just like know about them.
Yeah.
So I don't know where they're from actually. That's a good question.
Yeah. They could be from Texas, but I don't know enough about them. But I just thought that was a funny story.
Was it all 19 at that point? Well, did it end up being more than 19?
I don't know. I think 21.
21. Yeah, that sounds
They
right.
might have lost a baby that like I don't know, passed away when I was a little bit older. I'm not sure. I don't know enough about them.
Yeah.
But
except for that there's a lot of controversy now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that story was just to like continue the conversation.
Did you ever do any, like, were you accredited whenever you graduated? And did you have to do, like, what standardized testing? Did you ever do that?
Yeah. So in Texas, it's not required that you be accredited. I know in some other states, the laws are very different.
It's not here either. That's what I mentioned. I was not, I was, my sister wasn't.
Okay. Yeah. So I was not. Once I got into high school, I did dual enrollment and then graduated high school and then a little bit later graduated college. I didn't go past an associate's, so yeah, I was not accredited, even though some of the classes along the way that I took were accredited. My high school diploma is not an accredited high school diploma. But here in the state of Texas, you do not need an accredited high school diploma to get a job or anything like that. If you're gonna work for like a government agency, I believe it's required that you have like a college degree or you go get your GED. If you don't have an accredited high school education. But again, there's always like nuance. Like you can get like a homeschooler like exemption and like prove things to make it happen. But yeah, that's another thing. Like homeschooling in the U.S. is not across the board. So for your own individual state, like you really do need to know the laws because it can be very important that you know the laws.
I don't know if y'all ever utilized like any of their resources, but HSLDA, it's like Homeschool Legal Defense Association.
Yeah.
They have pretty much a rundown of like all the laws and legal information for every state, and then if there's ever like a point in which for some reason like you need legal defense in regards to homeschooling, like, you know, if there is a university is trying to discriminate, you know, because of your home education and, you know, something like that, then HSLDA, like, that's their entire thing. What they do, they will defend you in a court of law, because they have all of that information to back it up. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So that's a good resource, like, if you're wondering what, you know, what it looks like for your state specifically.
Yeah. But yeah, that is very important because, I mean, I live in Texas. I'm only like saying all this information based off what I grew up knowing. So in Texas, you definitely have more freedom to do whatever you want, really, with the route you take for your home education. In Oregon, where my husband was raised, it's kind of in the middle. They do require an accredited high school, so they need to go through a program like a BECA that accredits you at the end, or does Bob Jones University do accreditation?
I don't know.
Okay, because that's what they went through, but then they also went through a charter school at the end of it. So, but is there anything that you can think of that you want to say about any positive words about homeschooling that you want to give? Encouragement for the homeschooling mother or someone wanting to get into it, but I don't know, they're just like teetering around it.
I don't know. I mean, it's kind of hard to say because we're not like actively homeschooling moms yet, you know, like you said, because of the age that our children are. But I think we've mentioned a lot of it so far, just like knowing that regardless of what your education is, you are capable to school your own child. It is not beyond you to be able to do that. Don't let somebody convince you otherwise. You know, don't take it so seriously that you have to, you know, if your kids are in public school and you're pulling them out and you think you have to structure your day, you know, 8 to 3 p.m. and we've got to be sitting here, you know, no pajamas on. You got to be, you know, like, just let it be free flowing and, you know, figure out what scheduling looks like for you, figure out what curriculum looks good for you, and be able to adjust when needed. And not just have it so strict that, like, okay, well, if we decide halfway through the school year that this textbook is not working for us, like, don't force you and your child to push through. Yeah. You're just going to be, like, setting yourself up for failure for the next few months and heartache and crying and fits. You know, like, that's all it's going to be. Be okay with pivoting as soon as you notice that you need to, and, you know, taking a different route. And other than that, I don't really think. Yeah, I think we started this off like we were gonna hate on public school, but really it's just more a conversation about homeschooling. That's all.
Yeah. Very strong title.
When you texted me, I just like audibly laughed out loud. You're like, "This is why public school is trash and rotting your children's brains." Oh, it was fun.
Yeah, we didn't go that hard. I'm sure we could do a whole nother podcast of like pulling out all the receipts on public school. But I think we'll end there. We have a bad habit of rambling on and going over time sometimes.
Yeah, so this might actually be our shortest episode to date.
Yep.
Look at us.
Look at us. Look at us. But yeah, thank you for listening. If you're a public school mom, thank you for listening. If you're a homeschool mom, thank you for listening. If you're in the middle and are wanting to homeschool, but you're terrified of pulling your child out because you're scared of messing up your child, I hope we provided some encouragement and resources. I think we'll try to link the resources we talked about in the description. Just like a Becca Sunlight, Bob Jones, maybe we could do that. But yeah, thank you for listening, and we will catch you next Friday. Last episode came out a little bit late because
I was out of town.
Yes, out of town. What's the word? But this episode will be on Friday, and next week's will be on Friday as well. So we'll catch you then. We don't know what we're talking about yet, as always, but thank you for listening, and we will see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye. Okay. Yeah, I'm on 1% now, so